This is Jim Vanderscaff with Down East Wood Art, and we're bringing you a video on tips and tricks that I've used. I've got a number of them, so I wish to show you, and we'll get started with that right now. So the first tip and trick is how to drill holes through wood without tear out on the underside. This is a little stool that I put together. You can see it's got 3 legs and it's got 3 holes in the top part here that you have to drill. You drill those from the underside, and I'll just show you what they look like. They're the same way like this. So you have to drill from the underside, and you don't want this material around that hole to rip out. And so there are a number of ways to do that. This process is also made more difficult by the fact that the legs have a 5-degree bevel, not bevel, but angle that they cut into the wood, but I'll show you that process as well. So we'll move over to the drill press, and we'll set up just how we do that. So here's my setup on the drill press. As you can see, the drill press here, and I've got a board that I've cut. I've cut out a little section in here that's about the size of this piece of wood. And the way that this works is you slide that little piece of wood in here, and then it becomes the basis for something that you drill through from the top. So we'll demonstrate that by drilling this piece of wood. It's just a scrap piece of wood, but I want to show you how that's done. So we'll set up the drill bit in it, and I'm using a Forstner bit. It's the same drill bit that I would use for the stool that I just showed you. So what we'll want to do is clamp this piece in place in here because we want it clamped down sturdily to that little piece of wood so that there's no tear out that we happen to have a problem with. So this is the way I would do that normally for any situation where I didn't want tear out, and then we'll just start the drill process. Okay, that's it. We've drilled all the way through the board and down into that little sacrificial piece, and now we'll see how that came out. Here's the hole. You can see that we drilled from the top, and here's the hole on the other side. There's no tear out there at all. Hole from the top, hole from the other side. So it's essential to keep that down on the wood as tight as you can, and I'll show you this little cutout piece, and we'll show you what it did. Now you can see that that's the hole that was just barely drilled into it, and the wood around the outside protects and eliminates the cutout. So that's how it's done. It's very effective. What I've done is these are sacrificial pieces, so I've just made up a bunch of them. You can see them here. They're all the same size. They just fit in place, and I use them as I need to. So that's it, and we'll go into the next video where we show you how we do this at an angle. All right, so now we're going to demonstrate how to cut these holes without tear out on an angle. And I have to cut them at an angle. I think I showed you this stool before, but the stool has legs at a 5-degree angle from vertical, and so I had to make a jig that allowed me to make those cuts. And what I'm using for the sacrificial piece is a board that's clamped into the vise right here on the top. And let's say that this was my round top that I was going to cut the piece from. So I just clamped this down in my on top of the sacrificial piece, and which is clamped, of course, in the vise. And now I've used that same Forstner bit. It's a 1-inch bit. It's the same size as the dowel that I would put in place. And now I have to do something additional. I've got a little digital device that allows me to set angles, and I've set this. It doesn't show now because I set it in the past, but the angle is 95 degrees, so that when I set it on something like this, it gives me that kind of angle that I need for this leg. So it's, after a while you can eyeball this, but when you're doing it for the first time, it's difficult to get that angle just right, and you want all three legs to have the same kind of angle. So I position it on the board, and this board would just be a flat board, so I could easily do this. And lay it right there, then get my cutting device, my drill, line it up with that as best I can, and start to make my angle cut, trying to keep it vertical in this direction and 5 degrees off in the other direction. So once I've got that, I just drill all the way through. Okay, we're going to go a little bit further. All right, I think we got it now. So we'll take a look and see how we did. So there's the hole. There's the hole going in. And you'll notice that the bit slipped a little bit to one side. That's unusual for a Forstner bit. It's just this wood allowed that to happen. I didn't get cut all the way through, but on the sections that I did get cut through, you can see that there's no tear out. So that's the way the process works, and it works quite effectively. Thanks. Here's another tip and trick that allows you to prevent racking in a vise. And what I've done is make up these little devices and label them so that I've got something 1 inch wide, a 1/2 inch over on this side. I made another one that's 3/4 inch wide. And what do I do with them? Well, if I've got a board that is 1 inch wide and I want to clamp it on this side, let's say I'm cutting some dovetails, I slip the 1 inch on this end to prevent racking over in here, to prevent racking, and then just clamp down on the vise. And because the force of the vise is here, now with this little piece of wood, it prevents the racking. I can lock that down and it's really nice and tight. Now, obviously you need more than just one of these because this is for a 1 inch board. So if you want the 3/4 inch board, you just put this 3/4 inch device in this end. It's got a little a cover on top here that just prevents it from dropping down in. Take your 3/4 inch board, use the same technique. Clamp it in, sticks in nice and tight. Very handy technique for clamping all sorts of things in this vise. All right, here's another technique, a trick that I use with a little square device that's shown here. It's perfectly square, and a dado is cut in the ends right here where the 3/4 inch plywood, 3/4 inch or 1/2 inch, I forget what I use on this. It's 1/2 inch plywood and then a miter joint right here. So they're just a little square that you can use for clamping purposes. And if you want to do that, I'll show you how I do it. To join two boards together, just set them down like this. Position it where you want. Get the clamp on there. Make it nice fit. Move the second board into position. Get it where you want it. And then clamp this. And move it around just slightly to get it perfectly fit where you want it, like this, and I'll just show you that. So the clamps are holding that in place, and that's just a nice smooth fit at where my finger is. And it can be any kind of a joint that you're joining together. It can be an entire cabinet. You can use multiple numbers of these. They're simple to make. They're made just from nice, I think I had used Baltic birch for this because, yeah, it is Baltic birch. You can see the grain pattern and or the number of plies. And so it's just very handy for that purpose. I use them all the time. Thanks. The next tip that I would use if I was doing something like this and gluing these together is to use a simple plastic sheet like this. It's just simple plastic. I would put it on the surface that I was going to glue the joint on, make sure there's nothing that could bleed down here. The little drops that drop on here don't matter, because after you put glue on this joint and you let it set up and you pull it off, you can just pull this right off, and there's no tear out underneath where the glue and the plastic came into contact. I use that all the time to prevent tear out when I've got to glue joints like this together. This is a nice little technique.